Well, welcome. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm really excited to have you, and so important that we're talking about this conversation. This online first module is called Getting Ready to Go Inside. And it's occurred to me that we need to have some sort of orientation around preparing to take a big step like a sacred daily practice. It hadn't occurred to me, truthfully, when I wrote my book. And that's the thing that has astonished me is that, in a process of thinking about making those next steps to a dedicated practice, that we actually have to look at things like mindset and sacred space and clearing our calendar to actually make time to do this personal work. So I'm intrigued, I'm intrigued because of course I had to do that initially, but I've been in a practice now for so many years that I sort of forget those initial steps. So I think this is where it's so refreshing to get involved with all of you and hear what it's like and what was it like for all of you to think about making this choice. What was the inspiration? What brought you to this place of saying, yes, I'm going to bring this into my life? And just go ahead and talk. Anybody that
I
wants
can start.
Go ahead.
Mine started with actually illness. I had, dealt with thyroid issues for probably, 15 years. But I came to a point in my life where there was so much stress and chaos that it got wacky and out of control, and I wasn't taking that time for myself, and my body completely shut down. And in that process, I physically couldn't get up. I had lost a bunch of weight. I was very sick. So I had to take that time for myself and slow down. And then started, the yoga practice, and then found Sarah's amazing book, which has led me on this amazing journey.
Yeah. So it was a physical issue, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I understand that, Abby, because that was the same with me, that it really was a matter of my body just saying, you can't go any further like this. You've got to look at this.
No, and having two young children, it was scary. I remember, it being my son's 8th birthday and having to, physically get up and go to the store and get a birthday cake and some balloons and presents, was like, it was a lot. It was hard, things that I had taken, for granted before, I physically couldn't do.
Yes.
So, but, it was a blessing because it's, changed my life,
Yes, absolutely. Why don't we just go around? Who else would like to speak on that? Amy, would you like to go, or Danielle?
Yes, my coming to self-care for me is something that I've always, I think, wanted to do and was interested in and read self-care books and, but hadn't entirely implemented into my life until actually 4 years ago, my husband passed away suddenly. And I have 2 small children. And I absolutely went into survival mode, and my body really probably has been in shock. But Sarah, actually, everything happens for a reason. And I remember you came into where I work, and I told you this, and you said, Amy, I am going to give you my pre-book. It was before you even published it, and you said, I want you to have this. I want you to read this. It's exactly what I think you need. And I did, and I realized that I absolutely had to take some kind of steps to take care of myself, because I'm taking care of 2 small children, a home, a house, my career, all of it. And I really have been in a survival mode, and my body absolutely was telling me this. I wasn't sleeping, and but but you just kind of keep going, and you put on a happy face and you just keep moving forward. So I actually really didn't even think that I did need this as much as I have come to realize that I do. So starting your program, I don't know, maybe last fall when we first began.
A year ago, last
I
January.
went into it knowing that it would be good for me, but not realizing how much it has actually changed my life.
Yeah.
So creating time for myself and learning how to do that, and recognizing my triggers and recognizing how to slow down, creating a sacred space in my home, even for 3 minutes in the morning, taking that time for myself. I mean, it's all been baby steps and incremental, but it has changed my life. Like very slowly, but it's happening. And so, I cannot say enough. And I still have so much further to go, but I feel in control a little bit more.
Yeah, it's great.
And so that's the beginning of my story.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And that's really important too, is that, you know, when you're in survival mode, that's the biggest thing that I try to state in programs is, who doesn't want to be spiritual, right? Who doesn't want to be at ease? It's not, we don't not do that because we don't want to do it. We do it because we truly just don't have the energy or strength to do it. That's the reality of it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think these initial stages of just getting into relationship with what it feels like to be in practice, like you stated, 3 minutes a day. That's all we ask for, is just give yourself 3 minutes. Of course, it grows from there beautifully, but it's just getting into some sort of dedicated practice, right?
Yes. And, and I think what actually changed for me as well was that monthly coming to your class once a month. At first it actually seemed hard to get to. I was like, I have so much to do. But then how I left after every session, I felt renewed. I felt so different. And that's how I wanted to feel every single day. I felt so at peace and so calm, and I having new tools and having talked and connected with these women. And I think discussing all the things that you want to discuss, but maybe you just don't take time to do with other women, other people, and having you kind of facilitate all of that. I started to and I realized that I could, create that in my own life daily. It just was giving me a sense of, that I could do this. Yeah. And
good. Thanks, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah.
How about you, Danielle?
So it's been interesting for me when I look back on this and hear everyone. So over 6 years ago, I started on my self-care journey and entered into sobriety because of my outer reach for inner peace. And, that could be with anything, food or wine. And I became a Kundalini teacher. So, I really felt like I had my self-care down and knew what to do. And then in November, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And, just went through surgery, series of treatments, a lot of chemical changes like Abby talked about. And then in May, my dog of 12 years, after my treatment finished, he died pretty quickly from an aggressive form of cancer. So it was kind of this perfect storm for me. And looking back now, after I started working with you, Sarah, and kind of had that accountability to get back into a practice, it's like, how did I get here? Like, how did, amidst the chaos and like the crisis, I mean, at the time that I was diagnosed, I was doing a 2.5-hour practice in the morning. But as soon as I was diagnosed, it was like the first thing to go. And which is so interesting because looking back, it's like, oh, it should have stayed. But, part of the process was a meditation. So, regardless of right or wrong, it's just been so great to get back into that and have the accountability. And I, at first, was, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it more, but a little bit stressed about the time and all of that. And I just look forward to that kind of date with myself right now every morning. It's like, it's the only time that is predictable and secure and safe, regardless of anything else going on, which is, I think it's kind of what you talk about and promise, but it's been really nice to get back into that space so quickly after so much trauma.
Right, right. So let's just back up here, because Danielle is a Kundalini yoga teacher. So, this gives you a different perspective around this. So you said you had like a 2.5 hour meditation practice. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
At that time.
40-day. Yeah. Yep.
So, well, this is an important piece, Danielle, because, and a very important reason that we have teachers and mentors, right? Mm-hmm. Because I would consider you're getting thyroid cancer, you just dealing with that as a meditation in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So why would a 2.5 hour meditation practice drop away? It's no mystery to me why it would drop away. It would just be overload, right? Yeah. Way too much information at once. So this is why, Danielle is one of my clients, and we really went into not wanting this practice to be really big. What can be obtainable? What can you do? We're working with sleep here because sleep has been disrupted. So there's this whole element of really looking at somebody and making this a successful venture for them, right? Amy, I know you can speak to that. Abby, Myra, we don't need anything else to feel unsuccessful. You know what I mean? Because I think all of us have tried many different modalities, and what we need now is to really secure something that we're gonna will be sustainable for our life, Thanks, Danielle. Thank you for that. How about you, Myra?
Yeah, I think it was like first thing that caught my attention was like physical symptoms and like lack of like my breathing, like the way that I was breathing, and saying like understanding that I could say no to people. It was really important to me. I got to a time like as a single mom working a lot, and like I couldn't say no to anyone. So I was so overloaded that the first thing that I saw that I knew that I should be taking care of me was like my breathing patterns and my sleep and all of that. So it started as a physical thing, but then it got like, now I can understand what triggers me every day and how I feel every day in the morning and when I go to sleep. So it really changed my life, the way like that, taking that time for me, as the girls were saying, like having that date with ourselves, like that time, like, nobody's bothering us, like no problems, it's just locked out. So that's really important for me.
Yeah. I think that's something. I'm going to turn the light on here because I realize I'm getting kind of dark there. Is that better? Yeah. I am so intrigued with this date concept, particularly here on the Cape, because I live on a family property, and there is always something. Like right now, my 90-year-old mom has come to stay with me for a week, and it was sort of unexpected, and she lost a friend, and she's going through some stuff, and she needed somewhere to land. And I wanted to be able to say yes to her. I couldn't have said yes to that before because it would have been complete and utter overload for me. I have a client coming in this week. I have a Kundalini, the laundry list, right? Boom, 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 of all these things. We all have it. The greatest thing that this date has done for me every day is that it's given me more space in my life. All right. It's like I don't have any need to make the laundry list. If I find that I am going to that place of making the laundry list, then I start taking things away. I start saying, nope, like my ear just said, nope, I'm not able to do that this week, or being very, very clear around the boundaries, right? I want you to come, Mom. I can't wait for you to come. This is what I will be doing this week. Does that work for you? Can you still come, feel comfortable in my home? But these are my responsibilities and I have to do them this week, right? So you give that person this chance to dialogue with you. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. And we're all going to be happier if you can hear me and I can hear you. And it's clean, right? There's a clean component to it. And so what that date does for me every day is it's that check-in. I drop in, I go there. It's like, how do I land in my day today at a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level? You all have probably heard me say, what is the one element today that is screaming the loudest? Is it the body? Is it the mind? Is it the spirit? What's screaming the loudest? Let's pay attention to it. Okay, let's pay attention to that. So in regards to the worksheet that we're working with, it was, okay, we started with what is an external event that caused you to want to enter this journey. I think we pretty much answered that. Maybe not you, Mayura. Was there sort of an event that happened that said, wow, I really need to bring this into my life every single day?
Yes, there was. I had like some family issues with like, all some members of my family, and I couldn't like, they wouldn't talk specific to me, and I couldn't like really understand that. So I couldn't leave them and let them go and say, hey, I cannot deal with you every day. So I started having like these breathing problems that like this lack of air every single day, and I started taking medicines, and I went to a psychiatrist and lots of medicine, and just like, I don't know, I felt so bad that instead of making me good, it was making me like staying in bed all day, and I couldn't, like, it was affecting my life, my work, my relationship with my daughter, and it was so complicated. So I knew that just like medicine, it wouldn't solve my problem.
Right.
It was like generating more problems for me. So it was like that day that I thought, no, if I take care of myself with those self-care practices and going to yoga and meditating and paying attention to my body and to my mind, it was so much easier and so much better than taking medicines, and just like it didn't work for me. So it was that day that I decided to let go of those medicines and to work with
That's,
her.
that's great. That's so great. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in regards to medicines, I like to, it's not my expertise, but I really like to bring light to the fact that sometimes there is really great need to go on medicine, all right? Because sometimes we meet life and it's like, I can't take one more step right now. I don't know how I'm going to survive. And truth be told, that's when some, adopting some level of medicine is important to do. I also like to bring light to the fact that I think medicine is a slippery slope because, if we aren't doing anything else other than medicine, I think then, there's this, I remember, I'll never forget a doctor saying to me, because I was having severe anxiety at this time, and I said, should I go on anxiety medicine? And he said, what else do you do? And I told him, meditation and all of what I do. And he said, please stay with that. Please stay with that, because you're going to just have to increase the medicine and increase the medicine to get a hold of the anxiety if you don't do anything else. So that's what I feel the value of what we're doing here is so brilliant, because we're preparing, right? We're finding these ways. We're what did I hear the other day? Instead of being result oriented, we're process oriented. I love that.
Nice.
Which means that we keep on. We're not, there's no race to the finish line. This is a daily practice. I do want to just intervene here because I love what I've heard so far, but I'm reading this really extraordinary book right now. It's called Radical Remission. Anybody heard of it?
Oh,
No.
We'll be talking about this book in class and also with my clients. But this is a woman that she was a young intern, and she went in, to residency, and she was talking to doctors. She was sitting in waiting rooms with some clients, and there was these people that were having these radical remissions, and she went back to the doctors and she said, what's going on? What's going on with these people? And they would say, do not speak about this. It's going to be confusing. I don't want you to talk about this to anybody. Well, of course, she went out and she spent the next 10 years of her life studying these radical remissions all around the world. And just for the purposes of this conversation, there were 9 factors. 6 of them are what we're doing here.
wow.
Wow. That's great.
Amazing. I want to read this.
Me too.
6 of those things that she speaks about that are common throughout the world around people having these radical remissions are what we're doing.
I actually did see this list.
Did you?
Yeah, yes. And I was excited when I saw it because it's the same. It was such frustrating for me, and I'm sure everyone's seen it. It's like mainstream medical has done so much for me in the last year. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for that. And there were so many pieces that no one in that world could help me with. And so many of them on that list that you're talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a sidebar, but when I saw that in the table of contents, and of course I'm reading the book right now, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so glad to see that. It's just, of course we know it, but it's always beautiful when people are publishing stuff like this.
Right.
So to get on to mindset here, so you saw that this worksheet was set up, right, in a way that asks you these questions. And then at the bottom, it's sort of that prescription. Will you commit? Today is, do you say yes to doing this or do you say no? And, I want this worksheet to be realistic because there might be days where you say, no, I'm not going to do it. And that's all right. But come back to it, right? But keep in process. Again, let's be more process oriented than result oriented. The next one is the 2-part that we talked about earlier. When I feel triggered, do I have awareness to recognize that it's happening? And am I willing to do something to take away the anxiety? Am I willing to do something that'll pull me back into alignment? Anybody want to talk to that? Do you recognize when you're triggered, number 1? Number 2, are you willing to do something to deactivate the trigger?
Yes.
I think
I'll go. Oh, you go. I'll wait.
I was just going to say, I think the key for me is starting to be aware of being activated. So when I'm in a reaction mode, it's a lot more difficult to say, okay, what's going on right now? So it's kind of like a catch-22 for me, because if I'm not in a practice, it's much more difficult to be aware that I'm triggered. So with the practice, it's a lot easier to identify that and then say, okay, what out of my toolbox am I going to do to kind of bring myself back?
Right. Really important step, awareness. Number one, you just said it. Without my practice, I really don't have the awareness that I need to understand I've been activated, and then even more, do something about the activation. It's great.
Right.
Anybody else?
I always seem to like remind myself, am I being committed to my self-care practice? And then remind myself how I feel when I'm on that practice.
Mm,
I do that a lot.
yeah, that's great. That's great.
Am I in alignment, and then go back to the feeling of how do I feel when I'm on that, that constant commitment of the self-care.
Yeah. 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 My mom's my greatest teacher. So my greatest teacher is here with me this week. My greatest teacher. And I am fascinated how much, even with all the work that I've done in my life, how I still land in this place of feeling very vulnerable. And it's not her. It's really not about her at this stage of the game. It's just all this old stuff, right, that we have rolling around. And the difference between rolling around in it and also recognizing, like, there it is. There it is. I see it. Don't have to jump into the playpen with it. I can just watch it and work my way around it, right?
Be
And
the
it's
observer.
be the observer. Be the observer. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say on that? We good with that one? How do you deal with stress in your life, and what long-held behaviors appear when times are tough? I almost think we just talked about that. Meditation, mantra, yoga, and fitness. So how do you deal with stress in your life? Anybody?
I just, I use that observer piece, once I recognize it and see it and know that I need to take that time, it's like if my, kids are driving me crazy and I know that, I'm in this stressful place, I know, to make that time later on for myself and sit, and meditate and, just, relax
Yeah.
and breathe.
Well, I think it's a good time to bring up what stress does. So what does stress do to us? When we're in a stress response or an anxiety response or a fear response, what does that do to us?
Oh, my chest gets tight, my back hurts, I get headaches.
So that's a physical response, which is totally real. What
Yeah.
about emotionally? What about like just,
I mean,
do we have,
yeah, breathing and shortness of breath. Yeah.
I'm less present emotionally. And there isn't really a pause button because it goes back to that reactive mode. And I recognized this summer after everything happened with my dog, it was like, I went back to being a teenager. There was like this trauma response and it was visceral. It was like it completely took over. And it was terrifying because it wasn't even like my tools could work, but it also was great to bring it to light so that, again, I could be the observer. But I mean, it was just this, like the flight or freeze response.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I experienced this week, I was watching a Kundalini teacher online in preparation for my Kundalini class on Tuesday night. And one thing that he said, which I thought was just really great, and it's that word inherent. And he said that in relationship, one of the most harmful things that we can do is to believe that inherent badness or inherent sadness, or that storyline that gets us to that place of like believing that things are worse than they could possibly be. And the word inherent really stuck in my mind. Like, it's something that we just want to ride along. It's that wave of disaster, of sadness, and we just believe it's the way it is. And when we subscribe to that, that we spin out, you know, that's what I experience in my anxiety responses, is that I start believing that inherently bad storyline.
I recognize like that served me at one point in my life. Back when I was a teenager, it's like to prepare for certain stressful things and be ready. But now it's one of those things that's kind of turned on me, and it doesn't serve me at all anymore. It just causes so much pain and extra. It's like you're reliving the issues over and over again in your mind.
That's right. That's right. And stopping that, right? Stopping that line of thinking takes awareness and then a tool.
Yes.
Okay, I've been activated. I'm on this. I'm going to do this. Boom.
I know, and for me right now, I've spoken to you about being a mom of a teenager, but I think that it started a lot earlier. But it's the fear of something happening to my kids. It's the fear of, they're getting on their bike and they're riding, and that's where I take everything to the worst case scenario. So
Right.
these tools have been so important for me to be able to access, because now I've got a new driver, and I mean everything. So it's stopping, taking a breath, resetting all of it, all my fears, all my triggers, all my initial reactions of fear in the worst case scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. When you can get a hold of that, it's magic, it really is, because it's so frightening to think in that way. And I don't think that we have any idea how powerful we are until we start implementing these practices and we go, my God, it really works. It really works. It's
It takes over otherwise.
well,
Absolutely.
it takes over, and truth be told, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. But that's the consistency, right? That's the practice, and that's what we're learning in these initial stages, is how do we put this in place? How do we create space for this in our life? And how do we use it? Because otherwise, this is all theory, right? It's theory. We've learned it, we've read it, we've heard about it, but we've not actually applied it to our life.
Right.
And I think that is, that precipice is really a dangerous one. It's like we have all this knowledge, but we haven't applied it. So it's just like, it just will blow our brain apart. It's like, oh my God, I know this isn't the way it has to be, but that's the piece, right? That's the faith. When you take that step and you actually make it a part of what you do in your every single moment of your day, then you start seeing the results, and then it becomes your truth.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. Okay, so let's talk about living space here a little bit. So what did it mean to bring this into your life, in your house, in your physical house? Yes, there's sacred space, but what about like just in your house overall? I'm interested. What have you done to sort of bring this practice to life in your home?
Well, I think again, when we talked about that, coming to your house, and that feeling of smell and sound and music, and just the candles. And I mean, you don't have to have that in your house, but in your environment. But then to do it on a daily basis makes you feel so good. Having people over and creating a really joyful space for yourself and others. I mean, because I think you can just get out of bed and just keep going and not really think about it, and maybe do it occasionally as a special treat. But doing it every day, or having a little bit of it every day, makes you feel good. And yeah, it does something to you.
Yeah. So if I've had a dinner party, or even let's just take our fireside conversations where we have almost 15 people in our little space in my home. I
Mm.
just have a little cottage, and everybody leaves. And I don't think there could be any better energy than the energy that we
Yeah.
have when we're all together, because it's so dynamic and beautiful. But I always, when I'm cleaning up, I take my smudge stick and I smudge, I clear, right? That's a ritual, that's a practice. I'm not clearing away bad energy, because there's just beautiful energy there, but there's a lot of energy, right?
Mhm.
So important that you go through and in this ritual, clear out the space and making room for the next great thing to happen, right? So these little things that we do that become a part of what we are and who we are, really just make it a holistic practice at all levels, really. How
Yeah.
about you, Mayura? Anything like that you guys do as far
Yeah,
as your...
I have something extra here, which is like I have to work from home, so I stay here all day long. So it's really important for me to have like my own space, and like I have my as you said, I always like to bring flowers or bring something to my house that makes me feel like it's so good to be here, not just like I don't spend the whole day out of my house, but like being here all day long makes me even more important for me to have those things. And I have my candles, I have my flowers, so I make it like good to be here. And it's just like having this everyday things, like the small things. It's not just like having friends over, or as occasionally as Abby was saying, but like having these small ongoing things. It's important for me.
Right. And so, like, another level of that would be, it makes you feel better, right? So
Mhm.
it becomes a part of your self-care,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? Right. That's great. Anybody else?
I noticed after I started this self-care practice that I needed to almost like declutter and
Mm,
almost like get rid of material things, because I think I was so like if I buy the new pillows, or if I buy the things or change the things around the house, it's going to make me feel good. And it wasn't the material stuff.
right.
It was inside. And so now it's, I have the flowers around, and by my kitchen shelf, by the windowsill, I've got like my little oils and my Buddha and my spray, and my little heart rocks and little crystals, and just little things, like in the office, I've got a spray and I've got a crystal, and in the sunroom there's a little candle, and just little reminders that aren't materialistic things, you
Right.
Yeah.
know.
Right.
That was huge for me, that whole piece, having to change things around with the seasons, because if people come, it's got to be all that stuff. That
Right.
was a big piece for me, and realize that that stuff doesn't make me happy anymore.
No.
I make me happy. I fell in love with myself. I never loved myself before, I mean, that was a huge piece. And
Mm,
being alone and wanting to just, the kids go off to hockey. You used to feel like, oh, I have to go with them. And it's like, no, like I want to be home. I want to read. I want to light a candle. I want to just sit there and snuggle, like stuff I never did before.
yeah, thanks for bringing light to that, Abby. I think, and I truly hadn't even thought of this. It's like when you start understanding what you're being drawn to, too, right? Like, oh, you see something on the beach and you want to pick it up, or there's a certain candle, certain scents will appeal to you,
Yeah.
others won't. Um, that it is a self-discovery too, isn't it? It's like, wow, I'm awake to myself, you
Right. The
know?
little reminders, just putting the little reminders in every room. And it's not right. It's the little heart rock, or, the little, sage oil that's, after I wash my hands, I just put it on my wrists. And, it's the little things.
Right. And even how they change, right? Like I notice at certain times of the years, I'm drawn to certain colors,
Right.
that, I'll just want things to be orange, or I'll want them to be whatever it might be. And it might come through in flowers. It might come through in pillows, or some other
Right.
things. But the other thing you mentioned was the declutter thing. And I think this is a
Yeah.
really important piece of the sacred space. Um, because that was an old habit for me too, Abby, was let me buy something, let me do something
Right.
outside of myself to please ease this sadness or ease this pain or whatever it might be.
Right.
And now I have such a different experience with buying things, because it's like, what am I going to, I don't live in huge homes, first of all, so it's like, where am I going to put it? And even like paying for it, getting it from there to here,
Right.
all these things that I never considered before, that didn't feel supportive of me, right? Um, I don't really want any part of it anymore. It's like, no, it's really not worth it. No, I'm going to leave that there.
Right.
So,
Right. It's a quick fix. It makes you feel good for a little bit, and then it's like,
And then it doesn't.
it
not really,
doesn't.
not really what I want.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much. Anybody else have anything on that? All right. I love this one. What are some ways to prepare your body as a moving, breathing, living space? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
That's a hard one.
Yeah. Right.
For
You know,
me, I go back to some really super basic things, yoga move type things for me, but really subtle. I've heard it said that some of this practice is really tapping into like a more subtle part of yourself, and like the subtle body. And so where I came from, this, big, has to be this big wow always, has to be this hard workout, this, in this journey, I've realized that gentle neck rolls and some spinal twists and cat cows in yoga, very basic, subtle movements. And that's, there's a time for me to work out and do these more rigorous things. But for me, during some of these self-care times, it's really, especially after my cancer, is just or that experience, is just being so appreciative and honoring my body and knowing the motive behind why I'm doing the movement, and knowing that it's always coming from a place of love and not that fear of you need to do this, you need to do that. So just trying to really tap into that.
Right, right. That's great. That's great. I've had kind of an opposite thing happen for me, Danielle, because I've never really been somebody that's weight trained at all. I do a lot of cardio, biking, and yoga, of course, a lot, and feel very strong. But this past spring, I started, I'm going to be 60 in January, and my knee was hurting, my hip was hurting, my shoulder was hurting. It was like, whoa. And I tapped in, to what I needed. And what came up for me was weight training, strengthening. And I've taken that on this summer. And funny, all these little aches and pains have gone away, So interesting, again, this self-study, this inner inquiry, it really guides us to know what would be the best choice for us at that time. And I think if we, as I speak to in my book about you are the expert on yourself, if we really get so clear with that, we have the ability to communicate that to others that are supporting us. And that's a real value. So anybody else on this?
Well, I think it was tricky for me because I think that I'm not tapped into this like at all. I mean, it's probably the thing that's really is very much missing for me all around, is whether is the yoga or is becoming more physically in tune with my body.
Yeah.
So that's an area that I really need to work on, focus on.
So Amy, We leave the body when it doesn't feel safe for us to be there. When trauma hits, that's what happens, right? The inner environment really doesn't feel safe anymore, so we go somewhere else. And
Yeah.
so wooing that energy, that spirit back in to do this extraordinary healing, it's a big step, right? It's a big step. And you are on an incredible process of getting there. So be patient with that, all right? But just know we do leave for a reason. It's called self-preservation.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So you'll decide when the right time is to come back.
Okay. Yeah. I know it's coming and I can feel it, but it's the becoming aware of it. Just
That's right.
yeah.
It's great. It's really great.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to talk about this?
I will. I know that the meditation and yoga are a huge piece. I mean, I do the meditation every day, and the yoga I try to do at least 3 or 4 times a day, just for myself. I think also the healthy eating piece is huge for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I went through my event or even before that, I never had that mind body connection. It was just like I was just running. I was eating whatever and, it didn't matter what I had, but now I know like my body responds differently to gluten.
Yeah.
It responds differently to like dairy, I can now feel these things that I didn't before because I wasn't listening to my body.
Right.
I
Right.
was so detached from it. It was like I didn't realize that my body is my machine and that I need to take care of it. It was like, oh, I'll just eat this or I'll eat this. And it's like, I always felt like crap. I didn't know what,
Mm.
but now I know, like, if I eat that gluten tomorrow, I'm going to feel drowsy or, or that big ice cream is going to make my stomach hurt. And I know that sleep is a huge piece for me.
Yeah.
I need my 8, 9 hours of sleep. If I don't, I drag, and then I get into that place that that bottom place, and I want to be up here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's huge for me. The sleep and the food is huge for me, and just that connection to myself now. And realize it. I didn't realize it. I was running on empty. Clearly, I didn't realize it because I bottomed out with my food and my sleep and my self-care, and now it's a huge piece.
Right. Right. Um, and that's the reason I wrote the book the way I wrote the book, because it's really, as I call them in the book, the elements, right? The emotion, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, and that none of them work separate to the other. So there's always this relationship between all of these elements. Although when we are uh, separated, when we leave, when we, whatever it might be, when we're in stress and anxiety, we don't get that relationship, right?
Right.
We
No
don't.
clue.
We don't have any relationship to it. So it's not like you just said so beautifully that gluten is going to make me feel drowsy the next day or whatever. We don't have that way of thinking.
Right.
So we're really in a process of awakening to all of a holistic awakening, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. What rituals do you already have in your life that you would like to build upon? I mean, this is the thing, right? People say to me oftentimes, well, I don't meditate. I have never meditated. And I say, well, that's just not true because we all meditate on something. It might not be good, but we're all focusing our attention in some way or another, right? So for the rituals that you feel are already supportive in your life, what would you like to build upon?
I mean, definitely more meditation, um, more physical awareness, doing a little more yoga. I mean, I think just building upon my baby steps, the things that I'm just starting,
Yeah.
journaling, writing, being outdoors, connecting with nature, all of it, all the stuff that's starting to really awaken and feel good to just do a little bit more of.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Mayra?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same for me too, being outdoors and trying to have like that hour that I can go to a park and like
Yeah.
be next to water makes me feel really good. So it's something that draws me. Like I really like water, so I try to have at least like twice a week to go to that park that makes me feel so good and sit there and just like be in nature and meditate, and it makes me so good, feel makes me feel so good. So that's what I have been trying to do that more, so it's
Mhm.
on my list.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the piece about identifying what's filling you up and what's taking from you, that is just a very important awareness to come in, um, to your eyes. What am I trying to say? It's a very important thing to hold and understand. You know, being with people, being with events, being with food. What is this bringing to me? Is this great? Does it make me feel really uh, strong and happy, or is this something that's feeling like, I'm just clawing here, I'm just trying my best to survive this situation? We don't even get that kind of understanding when we're separated from ourselves. We don't even have that level of understanding. We're just in our life, whatever it is, and we just have the blinders on and we're just going for it. And so holding that awareness, what fills me up and what takes from me, is a super important one to build on. And I'd say that's a ritual. How about
Yeah,
you, Dean? Oh, go ahead, Mayura.
that you do, and how the girls were saying before, like how you feel after yoga practice, how you feel after, like that what I keep reminding myself, like those rituals, and really what brings me clarity, like when I have a big problem to solve or something, what do I do that brings me that, makes me centered, and like brings me clarity that I need to focus on what I need to do, and brings me strength, because sometimes we just feel like we cannot do this, and we can. And that's just like, as you said, having this mind connected to your body and to your, like being outside of this automatic autopilot that we go through.
Right, right. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yes, yes. I had a very interesting experience with my mother yesterday. I don't know if those that are local here know that we have Himalayan salt caves that have just,
Yes.
it,
How was it?
so it was amazing. But I took my 90-year-old mom there yesterday, and she was all for it, and I got her in. So just so in case you don't know, Myra, it's have you heard of them? They've just got the Himalayan salt all over the walls, all over the ceilings. They're on the ground, and you lay there in these anti-gravity chairs for an hour. And I came out, and I have an understanding of what that relaxation response feels like, right? I meditate. I've done this for many years, and I felt great, and I was just, but my mom came out, and she's like, I'm floating. I'm floating. And I sit her down in a chair, and I go to pay, and I look over, and there's my mom, like, she's like got her eyes closed. I'm like, I hope she's all right. And so I
My
go
God.
over to her, and I put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, Mom, are you all right? And she opens her eyes, and she starts laughing. She just like, she starts laughing. She goes, what is going on? I feel like I'm floating. I said, Mom, this is called relaxation. This is called deep relaxation. And what it opened up for me was this understanding that people that don't have a relationship with knowing what that feels like, it can feel very frightening to them, because they're not in control. What's going on? As she said, I'm floating. She got back. She felt fabulous. Her knee didn't hurt her. She slept like 9 hours last night, didn't wake up. I mean, really something. But anyway, it's an interesting thing to bring light to, that when you're not familiar with it, you don't have any real memory of how to get back there because you've never experienced it. And that's real life for a lot of people. So Danielle, anything else for you?
I don't know. I think for me, it's the commitment to just know that this is a priority. And for me, definitely in the mornings, simple things like kind of this checklist for me of, am I doing full belly breathing? Am I, throughout the day though, am I kind of aware of how I'm feeling at this moment, and then not attaching a story to it. So just some of those things around, for me, it's like this, just continuing to be slowed down and present.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end here, and I don't want to keep you guys past 9 o'clock. I so appreciate your joining. In my ear in Brazil is in 10 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of that. The last thing that I wanted to bring light to was the calendar and the schedule. And I think this is a really important thing because I've heard it so many times, how will I ever make time for this in my life? My life is so full. So what do you think about that? I mean, we all have full lives, right? We know that. Has this given you more time? I mean, it sounds crazy, right? That we have to add another thing to get more time, but how does it feel to your life? What does it feel like in your schedule?
I think it's funny. It was, when I first started the practice, it was like, how am I going to find this time? I'm a mother of 2 kids, running a business, and I got up a half an hour early, and I made that time for myself, and it seemed to make the rest of the day easier and lighter because I felt like I had already started the day for myself, and and done my gratitude. What am I going to be, what's my intention today? What am I grateful for? I feel happy to do it before. And it just seems to make my day lighter.
It's beautiful. So glad.
It does make your day feel better. It's just, so it is something that you start to look forward to every morning. I mean, it really took a while for that to become incorporated into my life. But so I think it gives you more time because you're more aware of your day and more aware of your time and what you want to do with it. I guess it's just makes you become more aware of your intentions for that day, for the day.
Thank you, Amy. Danielle?
I was definitely struggling with the whole same exact time every day because that's something I didn't do. I'm like, I did a 40-day, 2.5-hour meditation, but this idea of the same time. And it's interesting because I had seen this and I wrote basically a note to myself that today was the first day that I gave myself permission to do it at a different time. And I'd done it ahead of time and I absolutely hated it. And it's just no, this is my time now. This is what I do. It's like that date with yourself. And I don't want to move from that and notice that everything I did before that time, because it was later in the day, was just not the same. I felt very unsettled, ungrounded, which starting this practice again, being in that space where you entered the day kind of with your energy balanced, then to have a day where you kind of decided on your own that you weren't going to do that, it was just very unsettling. So that was great to know. And I'm grateful because it's I'm excited to be back at my regularly scheduled time in the morning. So
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's one of the non-negotiables when I start with people is they're like, well, I did it in the car. I did it in the shower. And it's like, okay, that doesn't work here. As we start this practice together, and this is how tough I am about it, I say, you do that time or you call me or you email me if you've missed, because in the beginning, it's so valuable. It's really less about the meditation at that point and really just about creating the discipline. That's what's the most important thing in the beginning. So yeah, that's great news. I'm so glad that it's worked out so well for you, Danielle. Yeah. That's great. Great. How about you, Mayura?
I like to have that time for me too. And as you said, it's non-negotiable. We have to put that like as a priority. And how the day changes, like having like what are the priorities, and you know exactly what to do during your day, and it gives you more energy and clarity. So it's and as you said, one day that you skip it, and or if you miss it, it's impacts so much my day and my routine. So it's really important, like creating the habit. It's really difficult, but once you do it, it's just like you feel how important it is and how you lived before without doing that. Like it's gives you like that perspective of everything.
It sure does. It sure does. I've heard it said a number of times, we wouldn't think about leaving the house without brushing our teeth or taking a shower. Why would we think about leaving the house without clearing our minds and, establishing a place, a strong base for our day? And that's what's really apparent to me. Right now, David and I ride our bike very, very early in the morning because Cape Cod streets are crazy, right? So we're out in the morning, like 5:00, 5:30. And I am like, oh, I'll do it when I get back. And now I don't even want to do it. I want to only do it before because I don't even want to be on the street without, meditating before. So it's like, the things we do when we understand how important this is to our life and what it brings to our life, right? So small steps to big steps and, all of these things, right? We talked about mindset. We talked about creating the sacred space. How do we do that in our physical space and also in our inner space? And then, of course, very importantly, more logistical is, well, how do we make room for this in our life? How do we make room for something that, already feels so full? And in fact, when we do, there's so much that's freed up for us, so much clarity, so much perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough for tonight. And I want to thank you all. Is there anything that anyone would like to say in final words? If there's people watching this out there that are kind of interested in what this would bring to their life, what would you say to them right now?
That I would never have thought that this would change my life as much as it has. And I'm a really open person, and I'm not closed, and I've been open to this for so long, but I think the discipline of it is what I never had. And that's been life-changing. It's been a game changer for me. And that's what
I've heard. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. I've heard, find people that have what you want. And for me, in the last few years, the people that seem to be able to go inside and not reach out for that peace, the people that seem to be able to remain or seem a little more calm amidst chaos, not getting hyped up or caught up in the drama. It's just all been so much more appealing to me and those people. And so my thing on that is, the only way that I've been able to gather any of that is through kind of taking the suggestions from these people that have been adopting these practices over the last few years, even when it didn't make sense to me, even when it seemed crazy, and taking the time or thinking I'm never going to get to this place where I want to do it. All of that, I just kind of trusted these people that had kind of walked the path before me. And then it's like, before you know it, I mean, even this morning, I was like, I remember being in my 20s, like, when am I going to be that person that sits in the morning and likes meditating? You know, I sit for like, and it's like, you've arrived a little bit at that because of just this being consistent and sticking with it and just trusting the people that have walked before you.
Love that. Anybody else? Final words?
It's been amazing. I was one of those people. I can never meditate. I can never quiet my mind. Like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. I mean, it is amazing, being able to meditate and feel what you feel, and being able to quiet your mind. It's easy. Doing that I remember, doing that 40-day, practice, and even being on vacation and saying, I'm not going to be able to do this. Well, I found the time. I, went to take a shower, but, went in 10 minutes early and just sat there and, made that time, hidden from everybody, or, it's simple, it's easy, it's amazing, it's life-changing.
Mayura?
Yep.
I think the girls said it all. I think that having that time and really having that not time, but like having that strength to do it every day and finding the time and taking care of ourselves, it's so important, and how life changing it is. Because once you are strong, you can take care of, like, as like I have a teenager, so I have to be strong. So taking care of me is taking care of her as well. So all of that like, we're not just taking care of ourselves. When we're strong enough and we're like centered and grounded, we know that we can make better and be better for everyone around us. So I think that's one of the things that made me stop and take the time to take care of myself as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think what I'd like to say to that is that I feel worth it now. I feel worth this effort, and I never imagined that I was that person that didn't feel worth it. That's sort of the strange part about it. It wasn't that I felt like I was self-deprecating, or I never felt that was me. But once I started this practice and started to really tune in to who I was and what I wanted and what filled me up and what took away from me, that this sense of self-worth and strength became so profound. And just like what you just said, Mayura, we want to help. Naturally, when we get this strong, we want to help those around us, right, get strong too. But what we really come to understand is that the most important part of it all is the example. Is that once we are these people, because we've dedicated this time and energy to ourselves, that we radiate that. That's our vibration now. Mm-hmm. So just by being in a room, even without saying anything, we are affecting others in a very positive way. And it is the greatest service that we can give one another, truthfully. It's magnificent. Well, thank you. Thanks for being a part of this. I think it went really, really well. I'm going to sign off here. Thank you so much.